Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are checking out a mod by the name of Linear Doom, a mod that seems custom built for people who possess a, quite frankly, awful sense of direction. And that's because it transforms the levels of the OG Doom itself into linear hallways. There's only really one direction you need to go, and that is straight ahead. I mean, sure, you could turn around and go back the way you came, but in the vast majority of cases, you don't really need to. To be honest, this is a mod that feels like it's been flying very much under the radar, which is a surprise, because this feels like the kind of mod that would very much catch the attention of the mainstream gaming press. The kind of thing that they love to hold up and say, look at what people are doing in Doom. But no, there has not been a single peep. I wouldn't have known that it even existed if I didn't do my own extremely intensive legwork. Not at all. So I feel very privileged to be here today and bring you this exclusive, fresh, untainted coverage of something you're probably not sick of hearing about yet. In all seriousness though, I actually quite like what they've done with Linear Doom. It's a joke word, that much is apparent, but there seems to have been significant care and attention into making sure that these linear hallways actually bear a resemblance to the levels that they are indeed compressing. And that is quite a feat when you consider it, to take those identifiable visual markers and still make them readable in this kind of form is quite impressive. When you think about it, this also speaks extremely well of the levels in their original form. Even with all of the convolutions intact, they managed to be memorable and distinctive enough that, after all these years, they've managed to essentially etch themselves into the minds of the people that played it. When it comes to dealing with the enemies in these simplified hallways, however, you can imagine that more novel solutions may be required, especially when it comes to dealing with enemies that throw projectiles at you. So, how exactly do you avoid a fireball aimed squarely between your eyes, especially when wiggle room is very much at a premium? Well, as it turns out, Linear Doom gives you just enough room to hug one of the walls here, and provided you've given yourself enough space between you and the enemy, you can bait an attack and have that projectile sail right past you. Makes dealing with barons an intense but survivable experience, one that's occasionally made all the more intense by Linear Doom's apparent stinginess in some levels when it comes to ammunition, especially here where, as you can plainly see, I don't have enough shotgun ammo to take care of this baron anytime soon, and it sure as shit ain't getting in that crusher. So yeah, the only advice I can really give you for this section is learn to love the pea-shooter pistol. You may be some time, but you'll get there eventually. So how do the bosses of Doom fare when it comes to a linear map? You'd imagine it'd be a little tricky. Well, as it turns out, the skills that we learned when it came to dealing with projectile-based enemies, such as the imps and the barons, work just fine when it comes to dealing with the cyber demon too. It's exactly the same principle. You hug a wall, you wait for the attack. Once the attack is passed, you move to the other wall. You just gotta make sure you get the timing right, and you should get through relatively unscathed. The only things really getting in your way are the plume and sprite of your own rockets, kind of obscuring anything coming back in your particular direction. But as you can see here, it is not a fight that lasts very long. I've got the sneaking suspicion that the Cyber Demon has a little bit of health reduction going on here, but that could just be because every rocket I was firing here was actually landing. Naturally, this leads me to how exactly are you supposed to deal with the Spider Mastermind? After all, it's a hit-scan enemy, right? It's gonna be a bit of a toughie? Nah, not really. Just whip out your big fat BFG and just shoot it till it dies. Pro tip, just shoot it till it dies. And that is pretty much all she wrote. In truth, it is not really going to take you all that long to get through Linear Doom at all. I mean, some levels are like this, where apparently the Swords level wasn't really all that much to justify the long, luxury hallway experience. So, in total, it took me about half an hour to get through Linear Doom, front to back. If you were hoping for Thy Flesh Consumed, the 4th episode that was added later to get the Linear Doom treatment, unfortunately it remains untouched, which acts as a kind of interesting counterpoint to everything that you'll have played through if you go through all of the 3 episodes here first. It feels very strange, suddenly launching into a map that affords you much more freedom of movement. If anything, Linear Doom has helped heighten my appreciation for good, solid level design. It's a celebration of what we already know and love when it comes to the original Doom levels themselves, and reminds us that they do a fantastic job of leading us in interesting directions and taking us to interesting places while somehow ensuring that we don't get too lost along the way. So, bearing all of this in mind, would I recommend Linear Doom? Yeah, I think I would. It certainly gave me a few chuckles, which is the bare minimum requirement for a joke WOD, if I'm going to be honest, especially with those extremely truncated levels where there's just not really much to compress, not really much to reduce down in the first place, and thankfully this is the kind of joke WOD that doesn't outstay its welcome. As I've already mentioned, it's only going to run about half an hour, so if you've got a spare bit of time in your day, you should absolutely give this a whirl for yourself. And on that subject, if you do find yourself compelled to give it a try, you'll find the link, as usual, in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, or maybe you'd like to get your hands on early editions of my videos before anyone else. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.